49ers OTA sessions, and we got a lot of hints about what this team is going to look like in 2025, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. Bryce Huff, newest pass rusher with the team now at OTAs, and defensive line coach Kris Kocurek on all the rookies on the defensive side of the ball. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Coach Crocky. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us again. And join us every day. Love our everydayers here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For the second time live on YouTube today. It'll be the first time for you Friday morning when you maybe drive on your way to work. Maybe you're out for a run. Whenever it is that you listen to your podcast on the audio side, we'll be there for you as well, as we do every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you're subscribed up on any of the platforms, including YouTube. And if you're already subbed, hit the thumbs up. Let us know you stopped by. And I look forward to chatting with some of you on this live episode as we end the week here, talking OTAs and a lot of comments from the assistant coaches of the San Francisco 49ers and some of the intel we got from them. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Oh, it was quick. Bryce Huff back in his number 47 that he wore with the New York Jets, not that ugly number 0 he was wearing with the Philadelphia Eagles for the year that went wrong. He was on the field already for the San Francisco 49ers after being traded for at OTAs, passed his physical. Again, jersey number 47 that worked out well for him with Robert Saleh and the New York Jets. And not doing a lot of practice, but he's already there and he's in-house. Trent Williams, we talked about that on our last podcast, Croc. He was in-house as well. So kind of starting to look like a full team for the San Francisco 49ers at OTAs. And watching a little bit more of the tape from Bryce Huff and the good and the bad and what kind of player he is. I just think that the big thing for me with Bryce Huff is how important it was for the 49ers to add a dynamic pass rusher. And when Bryce Huff is asked to do that, just go fast off the edge. And I got some quotes from Kris Kocurek, the defensive line coach, about that very thing and about Bryce Huff. Just let him do the thing he does the best. And don't ask him to do a lot. Don't ask him to think. Don't ask him to be an early down run stuffer. Let him do what he's already proven he can do in the NFL. And that's show burst off the line of scrimmage, that wide 9 alignment, go after the quarterback, all gas, no brakes. He can turn the corner. He can bend. He has that flexibility. Reminds me a lot of a guy I really liked coming out of college in, I think it was 2018 draft, was it? 2019, in Harold Landry, who went to the Tennessee Titans and now I think signed as a free agent with the New England Patriots. That style of player. He's not the biggest guy, but he's got athleticism, quicks, off the edge, can bend, can get around the corner. And for an undrafted guy, he has some subtlety to the way he rushes the passer to where he doesn't give the offensive lineman a lot to block. And I can see why if he was asked to do more than that, maybe he wouldn't be as good. But doing just that, he can do that. And that's what he's going to be asked to do for Robert Saleh's defense in the 49ers. And we've talked about it a lot, Croc. They needed to add that pass rusher. Run defense looks like it's going to be a lot better on paper. A lot of young players. It still has to happen and it has to be developed. But adding that pass rusher, Bryce Huff, now on the field wearing number 47 for the 49ers.
Yeah, no, that gets me excited. I feel like it brought the defensive line full circle. You're looking at some of the young guys in the draft picks. Really, I mean, just let me rewind. Let me go further back. After free agency, you're looking at this defensive line, and you're like, these guys that they have in there, those aren't your ideal starters. Those felt more like rotation type players. And then you go into the draft and you get big Alfred Collins, right? Then you get CJ West, get these big dogs. And it's like, okay, I know what those guys are going to come in and do and what they're going to be good at. And they're going to stop the run. Okay, I like that. Those are guys that ideally you want to eventually be starters. And obviously you got Mykel Williams. And it's like, all right, we're really going to be stout on that edge. And you would love on third downs to be able to slide him inside and get him to rush from there. But who is that true speed guy? And I'm really excited about what they did with getting Huff. And you and I also had that conversation about, like, okay, yeah, it's 10 sacks 1 year, but what's the pressure rate? Like, what do those things look like? And people, shout out to 49ers fans, content creators. They dove all into that. And this is a guy that has been able to get pressure. Now, a lot of pressure, maybe not finishing, but for the 49ers, I don't think him finishing is the biggest thing. I think you want somebody that's going to rush a passer, push the passer off of his spot, get him to rush some of his throws, or force him into another guy by the name of Nick Bosa, right? So I really like them adding him. It almost feels like with that, everything came full circle with the line. Now it's just kind of little things behind there, right? Okay, that linebacker position, who's going to take over playing next to Fred Warner, and then you got the safety positions, got some banged up guys, Jair Brown, and you got Malik Mustafa. What's going to look like with them? And then, I feel like every time the 49ers post one of these OTA clips and they're showing those nice, pretty balls in the air, tight spiral, Brock Purdy cocking back, throwing the ball, receivers catching it, ball on the money. That kind of look like, who's in coverage here? Oh, no, it's Renardo Green again. So Renardo Green did not have that sophomore slump.
Yeah.
And as well as everybody else, kind of, clean up some of those things on the back end. But overall, I at least see the vision with what the 49ers are trying to do up front.
Renardo Green was banged up a little bit in OTAs, nothing major, but being held out, I believe, in the last open practice for the media there. More notes on Bryce Huff from defensive line coach Kris Kocurek. And I like a lot of what he had to say, and especially talking about how Huff, and remember, Croc, you, I think, brought it to me and the listeners what his former Eagles teammate Brandon Graham said about him. And it seems like a lot of people around Bryce Huff really like him. And Kris Kocurek talked about how he was an undrafted free agent and a self-made man, and he's a hard-working guy, and how it's hard to make an NFL team. And you don't see a lot of pass rushers that are undrafted or drafted late. Like the pass rushers and defensive linemen that are big-time players that get big-time contracts, those guys go early in the NFL draft, and Huff wasn't one of those guys. He wasn't a bonus baby. He was a self-made man and an undrafted free agent that had to work his way onto the New York Jets roster and ended up being a 10-sack guy by his, third or fourth year in the NFL. Talked about his get off, talked about some of the pass rush metrics that we had mentioned here on the show, and how those match up with the production that he had shown. And even when maybe the sack production wasn't there in some years, his win rates and his pass rush metrics were there to go along with the year that he did have his 10-sack season and really his breakout season. And Kocurek talked about Huff's disappointing year in 2024 and mentioned the midseason wrist injury, and plus transitioning, from that, hand in the dirt, 4-point stance, firing off the line of scrimmage to more of the stand-up role, and maybe just asked to do something different that maybe not was something that fit him all that well. And he likes the fit. And so those are the reasons to be excited about Bryce Huff, that he might be more like the guy we saw in 2023, the 10-sack season with Robert Saleh's New York Jets, than he was last year with the Eagles.
Yeah. And even if he's not that big sack guy, again, just the pressure rate. I feel like when you have Nick Bosa opposite you, to me, that's what I'm looking at more than anything. Just a guy that's just terrorizing quarterbacks, QB hits, right? Moving the quarterback off of his spot. Like, those are the biggest things that I'm going to focus on with him. But obviously, everyone would like to see a nice double-digit sack guy opposite Nick Bosa.
Yeah. Disruption is production, they say. By the way, Nick Bosa was asked about OTAs, and he's like, this is not football yet. So slow down on some of the evaluations. I think there are some clues to what's going on here, which is important. And some of the clues I think to take away are just where guys are lining up. What's the order of reps? Seeing Ben Barch at left guard, it looks like he's the clear starter at left guard. Seeing Spencer Burford working in at left tackle, right? Where guys are getting reps, I think, is one of the important things, and seeing making sure guys look like what you thought they were supposed to look like when they're on the hoof, right? When they're on the field. And Mykel Williams being smart, asking all the right questions, really immersing himself in the team, looking just massive. Just seeing, because the 49ers, Nick Bosa's he's not stubby necessarily, but Nick Bosa isn't like Myles Garrett. He's not 6'5", long arms. He's built a little bit different. And, Leonard Floyd, and thinking back to, I don't know, D Ford even. And the 49ers haven't really had a lot of those guys recently. And Mykel Williams is really one that looks the part. And you just see him walking around at practice, going through some drills, and just seeing his power and seeing how big he is. He looks the part. if nothing else. And I don't know how good of a football player he's going to be, but it's kind of nice to see a guy walking around with number 98 that's like, oh, that dude looks like I would not want to tussle with him, right? Like the first off the bus type of guy. Mykel Williams is absolutely that. He looks huge. Love seeing the size, and nobody's bigger than Alfred Collins, the second rounder. Unfortunately, he hasn't been on the field yet for the 49ers at OTAs. He's dealing with a little bit of I believe it's a calf injury.
Yeah.
More
on the sideline. Big bodies, though, man. That's what I want to see. And the 49ers have done a really good job of identifying guys that fit their scheme. But you look at the Baltimore Ravens, they went up front because they are big up front. So 49ers kind of stealing a little bit of that philosophy and going to get some guys that are really huge and going to eat up a little bit of space.
More notes from 49ers OTAs, specifically from defensive line coach Kris Kocurek. Some comments from Gus Bradley, the new assistant head coach from the 49ers. Johnny Holland, linebackers coach. Bobby Turner checking in as well. And, of course, your questions, your comments in the live chat here on YouTube as well. Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and you wonder, where did all that money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app either. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. And I love the collaboration. The best part of this is managing money and accounts with your partner. It's smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. So let's stick with Kris Kocurek's comments about the team and the Collins and West combination. Basically, he knows that they're both similar as far as they're built different. One's 6'6", one's 6'1", right? But they're both run stuffers. They're both big body space eaters in the middle. But Kocurek said that they both need to be able to play both DT spots. And that's kind of the plan where they're like, look, we're going to draft both these guys, but they got to be able to play together. And it really made it sound like they have a plan for them. And that plan is probably for CJ West to be more of the nose, the shade, the one tech, the two, kind of nose type guy. And then someone like Collins to play more of a 3-tech role. And there's really a projection there for him to be able to use his length to be a little bit further out from the middle. And I think we saw some of that, Croc. And I know you mentioned it when you were looking at the Alfred Collins tape with there were times where he showed athleticism. And I thought it looked like when he was doing like some 5-tech stuff that they had him doing at Texas sometimes. And he almost at the end of plays does this. I don't know it's weird because he doesn't have a lot of range as an athlete, but at the very end of the play, he's so big. The only way I can describe it is a frog splash. Right? At the end of the play, he will extend and dive. And all of a sudden, when he lengthens his whole body, it's like a frog jumping. And all of a sudden, he has this crazy amount of range and it can cover a distance to make a play at the end of plays. I thought that was fascinating watching Alfred Collins. I'm a little skeptical on him as a top 50 pick, being an every down, do everything defensive lineman. But there are some obvious skills and talents he has. And he's super athletic for being how massive he is. I know exactly what CJ West I think is going to be. Collins is the one I'm not sure. Is he really going to be a 3-tech? Is there a lot more pass rush there than the one sack he had last year in college? And the 49ers seem to think so, and they have a plan. Sounds like that's the plan, is Collins going to be more 3-tech. West can be more nose, more 1-tech type player.
Now, I saw it, and you got to squint a little bit. But you look, wait a minute, is that an athlete I see? That's a big dude. And when you see him do some of these things, right, I saw it more so versus the run, but I felt like if I can see him work some of these moves and look cat quick like that versus the run, I think versus the pass, it's just having more of a plan. So the ability is there. And again, hey, you do this thing well, cool. But there's a lot more. And if they like him as a 3-tech, I can see why, because I do believe there is that ability to take that next step as a pass rusher. You know, I think a lot of guys really coming out of college, especially playing that interior, they're so used to just being able to win with size. It's like, dude, I'm 6'5", I'm 330 pounds, I'm big, I'm just gonna win with this power, right? I'm on this big Texas defensive line. But now at the NFL level, you definitely have to be more. And again, I saw it in spurts, or not even in spurts, just kind of like, when you squint and you see it, and sometimes you could see it, but maybe the play is away. But it's like, nope, I saw you have that kind of ability. It's on Kris Kocurek to just get the most out of him and get him to be a little bit more consistent at that element of his game.
And I can see why a lot of people made the comparison to Chris Jones just because of how big and powerful he is. I don't think he's nearly as twitchy and athletic as Chris Jones was coming out. But it's interesting. And there's definitely some work to do. And it was hearing Kris Kocurek talk about these guys like, look, we have a plan, but the plan has to be developed and these guys have to develop along with it. And we think we know what they're going to be, but we're going to have to see them out there on the field. And so it's going to be fascinating to see how West and Collins both play. Do they end up starting next to each other? Do they end up playing a little bit more of the same position and kind of rotate in and out to keep them fresh as rookies? Because remember, rookies don't usually play as much as I think a lot of us are expecting a lot of these rookies to be playing on defense from week one of this season, their rookie seasons. Comment here from John in the chat. We're missing a penetrating pass rush defensive tackle. Maybe you can add one and cut down, stop the run for sure, though. And that's the things. I don't think they see it that way. I think the 49ers think they're kind of done there. I think they drafted 2 guys. I think they're going to move, Yetur Gross-Matos and Mykel Williams inside on certain downs to be able to gain that advantage as pass rushers. Now that Bryce Huff can come in and be the rotational pass rusher off the edge, and obviously Bosa on the other side. You still have Jordan Elliott and Kevin Givens, right? So I think I don't think of any positions that nobody's going to be added. They've got 6, 7, Kalia Davis. They got 6, 7, 8 guys. Evan Anderson, I haven't talked about. The team likes Evan Anderson a lot, and he showed a lot as an undrafted rookie last year for the 49ers. And Kris Kocurek actually talks about Evan Anderson, who's another big body guy, probably more of that one-tech style player. Talks about him changing his body and his diet a little bit, kind of intimating that he was a little maybe sloppy body last year and kind of changing his body and putting in the work there. So he's another interesting player for the 49ers that I think does make the team, Evan Anderson. So of all the positions, they've got the most guys maybe at defensive tackle. So I'd be shocked if they add somebody. Do they have enough pass rush from inside, though, is a good question from Joe.
Yeah, they're definitely not going to add anybody else. Well, I can't see that. I don't like to ever say never, but I have a hard time thinking that they're going to add more. And if they do, 2 things happen. One, there's either an issue like with injuries with some of these young guys, or the young guys stink. So if you see them add a guy, I think that's a bad sign one way or the other.
Yeah, and the thing with Collins is West is already on the field. West, you already know he could be, he's a 4th-round pick. If he's just a rotational sort of a defensive tackle, run stuffer, then you're fine with that as a rookie. And he's already on the field showing some of his power and violent hands, although they're not in pads. So it's really difficult. And again, as Nick Bosa said, it's not really football right now at OTAs, but, passes the eye test right away. But, just with nagging injury and a bigger body guy in Alfred Collins, and we saw like a very similar profile with Javon Kinlaw and what he went through with injuries. And it's like, that's the quickest thing that can derail a rookie season in an early part of a career for a player is not to be able to be on the field. And then you don't have the practice reps. And now the team doesn't trust you. So now you're lost in the shuffle and lost in the rotation a little bit once the season does start. And all of a sudden, before you know it, half the season's gone. You haven't really played that much. And so that's what you hope doesn't happen. And you hope that his calf or whatever it is, and I'm sure it's minor with Alfred Collins. You want that to be right for training camp so he can get in there and he can compete for those snaps. Mykel Williams, obviously the most important player on the 49ers defensive line. He was a 1st-round pick. He was the number 11 overall pick, and Kris Kocurek had a lot of kind things to say about Mykel Williams. Impressed with just him as a person, as a player, as a human being, as a body type. Already tight with Nick Bosa, like really eager to learn. And Bosa, it looks like, has taken Mykel Williams under his wing and helping him with tons of things, specifically with Mykel and what Bosa has been helping him with, his stance, his first step get off, his hand placement, a lot of the things that Nick Bosa is awesome at and was awesome at it right away. And that's what makes me excited because Mykel Williams is a powerful guy. I mentioned he's the first off the bus type when you see his frame and his length, his explosive power. But he's so young. He was 20 years old, right? And so I think there's a lot of growth that can happen with him. And if there's a special player that the 49ers drafted, it's probably Mykel Williams. And I love him working with Bosa because Bosa is the guy. Bosa is the technician that you want him working with.
No, definitely. Bosa is the guy that I think that's the main reason why he's good. Being more of a technician and being more of someone who's really smart. You look at his athletic profile, Bosa is not the most freakish athlete, right? He ran like, 4.8 or whatever it was. He's built kind of a little bit more on the stubbier side. He's not like this super long arm, tall specimen like you see from Mykel Williams. So if Mykel Williams, with his freakish ability and length and size and all that, can take on the teachings of Nick Bosa with how he wins, I think that's the makings of a terrific bookend for the 49ers.
I just love the makeup of a guy that's really seemed like he's a pro at such a young age, 20 years old. I think that's awesome. And that's exactly what the 49ers love and we're looking for in their draft pick there in the first round of this 2025 draft. All right. More notes on the 49ers defense, young defense, and from Kris Kocurek, Johnny Holland as well, and assistant head coach Gus Bradley, what he's bringing to the table, what he's gaining from the 49ers as well at this stage in his career. Next. Croc, a few more notes here from 49ers defensive line coach Kris Kocurek from OTAs. Talked about Huff's ability to rush from the outside, giving them the flexibility now to move Mykel Williams, Yetur Gross-Matos in to rush. Talked about how it was nice to see that on tape. Some guys, you have to project what they might be able to do, moving around to different spots on the line. They actually got to see that with Mykel Williams in college and already know he's able to do that. But I do think I don't want to undersell what Mykel Williams could become as just a pure defensive end too. And so I don't want to pigeonhole him this early as being like, oh, he can only win as a pass rusher from inside and he's only a run stuffer on the outside. I don't think that I'm ready to say anything like that about Mykel Williams. I don't think the 49ers are either. Note about Robert Saleh. Basically said he's still the same guy. Some small scheme tweaks. Defending the new offenses as offenses change, you have to come up with new ways to defend that, and maybe a little bit more movement, some different looks on the back end than that we might not have seen from Robert Saleh when he was defense coordinator of the 49ers. Do you have any clues to that with the way teams are playing right now on the back end of things? Does that just mean, less cover 3, more quarters, cover 6 type of stuff, maybe more dropping guys up and down? Because the 49ers are already starting to do that late in the Saleh era anyway.
Yeah, I don't foresee it being too much of a change from what we've seen from the 49ers defensively. You're right. I mean, and this is with a lot of teams. They've gone to more quarters. I think at one point, towards the end of Robert Saleh's tenure with the 49ers, they ran quarters on first and second down just as much, if not more, than every team in the NFL. Mm-hmm. So they already started that transition. I think for them just continuing to disguise coverages a little bit more. I think early on, Seattle scheme wasn't much disguising to it, right? That Seattle 3 was just, we're going to line up, this is what we do, and we're going to play at an extremely high level. Well, now you got to disguise a little bit, show a little bit more guys in the box, guys bailing out, rotating down. I thought they did a terrific job when they had guys like Hufanga out there in the secondary. Don't have Hufanga anymore. Lost them to the Denver Broncos. So now it's, all right, who's going to be the safeties? And I saw a comment in the chat where our guy Mike says, I still have questions about our free safety. I don't even think it's just a free safety. I think it's both safeties because you got guys that are injured. You had a lot of young guys that you're coming back that you were banking on to do better. I think that is a very, if there's any position that I'm worried about really on this entire team, I think a lot of fan base would say offensive line. But for me, it is the safety position. Just because, again, the health of it and the youth of that position. I like, especially Malik Mustafa, I like him, but even Siegel, right? We're thinking, okay, Siegel, you have all this athletic ability. Then he comes in and is like, oh, I'm kind of banged up. I'm not able to participate in OTAs. And that's not everything, but that's just valuable reps that he could be getting right now, especially while, another safety, Jair Brown or Jair Brown and Malik Mustafa. Yeah. While those guys are kind of dealing with these nagging things that they're trying to get over, and may not be that big of a deal, Siegel's supposed to be getting all these reps, and he's hurt right now, so he can't do that.
I was interested in what Gus Bradley said about being assistant head coach of the 49ers this year. He kind of skirted a couple of questions. He was asked, he was asked like, hey Gus, how come your defenses were so vanilla and you kept running cover 3 and now all these other guys and like Saleh's your protege and he's running all these different coverages, and he kind of skirted the question a little bit. And says that Saleh's evolved away from what they were doing together when they were back in their days in Seattle. And I thought it was fascinating that the first thing that Gus Bradley brought up when he was asked about his role was he talked about what he was going to get from the 49ers. He's like, I'm kind of excited to be here and learn what these guys are doing right now. And so I think Gus Bradley's here as much to help his own career and path and see what's going on around the NFL as he is helping the San Francisco 49ers. He's going to be more of a sounding board, he said. His job is to serve the coaches, whatever they need, serve the players in what they do, help what Kyle and Robert Saleh are doing, and just be a sounding board for the coaching staff. So that's the role, according to Gus Bradley, for what he's doing here as assistant head coach. Hopefully takes himself off.
Assistant head coach is someone that's supposed to, you can count on, you can lean on for certain things. And a guy like Gus Bradley, I mean, he's been there and done every aspect of it, right? From coordinating positions, being a head coach. So I like that.
Is he assistant head coach or assistant to the head coach, like The Office? Johnny Holland, talking about Warner. I thought this was interesting from Johnny Holland, linebackers coach of the 49ers. He said Fred Warner could be one of the best pass rushers in the NFL if asked to be, but they just don't really ask that of him.
Well, he's a very fluid and bendy guy, and he has a certain amount of aggression to him, to where I do think he can probably win consistently, even off of the edge.
Timing.
But he's not big. That's the thing. I mean, I said consistently. I don't know if he could do it consistently. What is it, 235, maybe 240? He's
probably actually gotten lighter, if anything. I bet he's 229, 230, something like that.
He's a tall dude, so it's not like
he probably doesn't have trouble swinging around
230,
235. Yeah, but I'd be shocked if he's playing in the 240s or anything like that.
Yeah, and again, it's not like he's 6 foot 230 where you could say, well, he's just more of a compact guy. Like, nah, he's tall, longer guy, rangy. Yeah. So he's not built to consistently win. But I think the way they utilize him and deploy him with some of these blitzes, I think they do a good job at that, especially at the rate that they do it at, which isn't like a ton.
Real quick note from Bobby Turner, running backs coach. I know we're talking mostly about the defensive side of the ball, but we've talked a lot about a lot of the coaches and what they said during these meetings. I didn't talk about Bobby Turner yet. And
did he sound a little agitated to you a little bit with like some of the questions? Or is he just kind of like that? Kind of. I think some people, he is old. Like, he's an old dude. So it's just an old guy, but he seemed a little like, I really don't feel like talking to you guys, but I'll answer some of these questions.
Well, he didn't seem as annoyed as Brian Greasy used to, but Brian Greasy used to seem like he was having the worst day of his life when he was in these scrums. I just don't think these assistant coaches are used to talking that often with the reporters. I don't think they really care. And I think it's hard for them to sort of like put on their fake, like, oh, okay, let me talk to the press rather than, how they just act and talk normally in meetings. Cause it's still old boys club a lot of times with these coaches and the way they speak off the cuff. But yeah, he didn't give a lot, but he did say that Christian McCaffrey is back to being Christian McCaffrey, just the same dude. Didn't go into too much detail, but didn't seem worried at all about Christian McCaffrey and his injuries last year. And then talking about Jordan James, the rookie 5th rounder, and then Corey Kiner, the undrafted rookie, who I think we need to do a little deep dive on here because we haven't done the undrafted free agents yet, Croc. Talking about toughness, competitiveness with these guys. Talked about how they're both really good scheme fits for the 49ers. And he didn't want to go into detail about the recruiting process or the draft process where he famously like calls these guys a million times and talks to them a whole bunch, but clearly they passed the Bobby Turner test. And he got me excited to watch Jordan James and Corey Kiner too, who shouldn't be undersold as the undrafted rookies. We've seen undrafted running backs do big things in the NFL. So I can't wait to dive into the tape a little bit further on Corey Kiner. I've already liked what I've seen there. Speaking of pass rush, by the way, Nick Martin, I think we talked about this last week at some point, but Nick Martin can blitz too. So look, if Bryce Huff and Bosa and whatever combination of rotation they've got up front isn't getting after the quarterback, I do think that that Nick Martin could be a guy that can just take off like a bullet on blitzes. And he had 6 sacks in his junior year. He had a ridiculous statistical season his rookie year with tackles and sacks. And his 6 sacks is more sacks than any of the 49ers rookie defensive linemen had in any season in their career. So, and Fred Warner could be the best pass rusher in the NFL. So they got extra pass rushers if they need him, Croc, is what I'm trying to say.
Real quick, let's double back to the running backs. Did you hear Bobby Turner's response or answer to the questions about Garendo not getting down or getting down and not scoring?
Yeah, he basically like, you have to ask him about that, man. I don't know what he's doing. He said one of them they had talked about, the other one they didn't even talk about on the sideline before he did it. Basically made it sound like he wanted to get in the end zone.
And then he almost talked about him becoming more of a pro. So he did. He kind of was like, I really don't know why he's getting down.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You got to ask him. And then he kind of followed up with, this year I'm expecting him to, he's got to improve and get better and score those touchdowns. And I'm like, so I think he just wants his guy to get in the end zone.
Yeah, I think that's it too. It's like, don't get cute, just score, and we'll go stop him on defense. Right. Unless they talk.
It's the smarter thing to do to get down.
Yeah.
It's the smarter thing to do to get down, though.
Yeah. In some cases, it is. I don't know if you're necessarily needed to in both of those cases. Real quick, last one I got for you here, Croc. I want to ask you this because I was asked this on the radio. I was on with Larry Krueger on KNBR on Thursday night, and he asked me which corner I thought I was most excited about that would stick, because the 49ers have a bunch of guys, and with Renardo Green being just, having a minorly nicked up, we know that there's going to be injuries in the NFL. So if it's Demo, if it's Renardo Green, the starters are out. You got Trey Brown, which I think is probably the clear 3 on the outside. And obviously the 49ers drafted Upton Stout to play the slot. You got Ciaran Neal's more of a special teams type of guy. Darrell Luter's been around for a couple of years. We haven't really seen a lot of Darrell Luter. You got Dallas Flowers, Derek Canteen, Trey Avery, Chase Lucas. Like, those are the names. There's a lot of guys, but you're one play away from one of those guys needing to be, like, say, a number 3 corner. Like, does any of those names jump out to you of the 49ers roster at cornerback right now? I think Robinson is there as well, right? The Robinson out of I forget what college Robinson's out of. Short, speedy guy.
I just want to see Upton Stout. That's the guy I'm excited to see.
Yeah.
As far as the other guys, I'd have to see them in training camp. As we saw last year, there is a need for them, and the 49ers had some of those guys have to play a lot. Isaac Udom and those guys, like Isaac Udom had to play a lot. Like, as long as he was healthy, he was on the field a decent amount. So I'd assume that one of these guys is going to really make it, maybe Trey Brown.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I felt. I was like, man, I don't have a good answer. I don't feel strong about any of those guys. I think they're just trying to throw corners against the wall and see what sticks. Darrell Luter, he's probably the one we've seen the most, but still haven't seen a lot of him. Have you seen anything with Darrell Luter? We're like, okay, yeah, he's a guy. Because there was some, we I remember post-draft, like, I've barely seen him since we evaluated him post-draft. It's kind of tall corner, had some competitiveness, but haven't seen much.
Nah,
yeah,
I haven't seen anything at all.
Right. I'm right there with you. So I had no answer for Larry on that one. Croc doesn't have much of an answer either. We're going to have to wait and see. Someone's going to have to step up and improve. They need that spot as the number 4 corner of some important depth, because one or two of those guys has to make the team, and some of them got to play special teams as well. It's needed depth. So, yeah, secondary depth right now, probably sneaky storyline as we head into mandatory mini camp, which is up next. I do want to thank all the listeners out there that tuned in live a couple of times today with us, and all of our listeners everywhere. Make sure you are subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Croc and I back next week to break down everything going on with your San Francisco 49ers right here, Locked On 49ers.